Welcome to the weekly on EqualizerSoccer.com, everybody. I'm Jeff Kassouf. It's Monday, May 2nd. Full weekend of action on Sunday. Western New York Flash kick things off at home, 3-0 win over the Atlanta Beat. Boston takes it 1-0 over Sky Blue FC, and Magic Jack with a 2-1 win over the Philadelphia Independence. Before we get to those games, a few off-the-field issues that I think have really been coming up quite a bit this weekend in particular, and kind of really have been building as stories. Attendance is the first big one, I think. 1,008 people in Florida for the Magic Jack game, 2,164 in Rochester, and just under 3,000, 2,789 in Boston. Obviously a drop-off from the opener and a drop-off from a lot of people. A lot of people expect Boston to be kind of the higher end of the league. Busy weekend in Boston with a lot of pro sports teams in action, a little bit understandable. But just in general, I think that there's definitely, on the attendance issue, has to be expected that attendance is going to drop a bit. I know it was expected for, coming into the season. I think a little bit disappointing, to see that the opener in Rochester couldn't break the 3,000 mark. And then, down in Florida, the 1,000 mark, by all reports, is actually generous. So what's going on there, who knows? The big concern, I think, though, would be Rochester there. I think that Friday night, we'll see how a Friday night game does this coming Friday. We're only 5 days away from a quick turnaround there for that market. Should do a lot better than a Sunday afternoon. Weather was a slight factor in Rochester, not really. An overcast day. Looked like rain, but, home opener, it's a lot more about a pre-sale there. And I think that speaks more to the pre-sale than the walk-up crowd because, as the home opener had time to build up. So puts the league average at 2,746, which is obviously a very significant drop-off from what we've seen, which has been the 4,000, even 4,500 range for WPS in the first 2 years. So, it's a concerning number, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see. I think that things might pick up a little bit in the summer. You have the kids getting out of school factor. You have the nicer weather factor. And really even, which I think might factor into Rochester in particular as an expansion team, the momentum factor of, fans getting used to the market, getting used to just coming out for the game, really. But, in general, I would expect to see that average attendance probably hover around the 3,000 mark, which it's obviously below right now. I think it'll climb a little bit, but the days of 4,500, I won't say they're gone, but I don't think they're going to be here this year. The other issue, obviously, seems to be coming up quite a bit now, especially down in Florida, with the report that the Sun-Sentinel was denied access to players and coaches for media requests post-game. I just don't quite understand what is going on with denying media access. I don't take the approach that media has a divine right to talk to anybody, but WPS is clearly a league that needs coverage. It has been since the start. Attendance has dropped. By all means, the interest seems to be maybe level with where it was, but it's not enough. I mean, that's pretty much universally accepted that there needs to be greater attendance, there needs to be greater interest. So for a league that needs that, for teams, and I would say plural, for in general, for any type of teams or league or players, whoever, to deny access to media, it doesn't make sense, especially when you're talking about a major local newspaper trying to get out and cover a team that, by all means, isn't trying to reach out to anyone. It's just shooting yourself in the foot. It really is. And unless there is a change made, whether it's in Florida, whether it is league-wide, where there's more acceptance of media, there's more more accommodation to them, and in general, it is tough because in general, I think that for the most part, teams and the league itself is extremely accommodating. But these specific situations that stand out, you can't be denied. I mean, it's league policy to grant interviews post-game, and that's just the simplest of things. I mean, beyond that, just access in general has been shut down in Florida, and that's a massive problem for the league. I think that it shows through in attendance, it shows through in interest, and it only hurts. There's really no positives to it. The idea of negative coverage we saw some negative coverage in the offseason with WPS. We saw it for the U.S. Women's National Team in the fall when they weren't, they didn't automatically qualify to CONCACAF. They had to go to the playoff. The fact is, that negative coverage, it was on people's radar. It might not have been the best thing. A lot of people like to complain that negative coverage is all that sells newspapers. It's all that people want to read. I don't necessarily agree with that, but beyond that argument, the U.S. Women's National Team, WPS, it was on people's radars nationally. Right now, shutting a team out, or a team shutting out media locally, cutting back on media accommodation, that's just off the radar completely, and it's not in people's minds, and I think really that's an even more negative thing. Unfortunately, that kind of takes over the issues, that along with kind of a lower attendance. To get to the actual game, the games that happened, on-field happenings, which are certainly what I would definitely prefer to be talking about. I was in Rochester, 3-0 win for Western New York over Atlanta. Very good performance by Western New York. I think it was more of what people expected the first time these two teams met in the 2-2 draw last week, which was by all means a great game. Not quite as much this time around, very much a one-sided affair. Atlanta was outshot 20-3 on the evening. Christine Sinclair, 2 goals. Alex Morgan gets her first pro goal. Marta really runs the show, even though she's not fit. Really looked good. I would say the one thing that you wouldn't see or wouldn't know about from the game not being on television, the right side of Western New York with Kelly Parker, McCall Zerboni playing as a right wing back, looked really good. I thought really ran the attack very well, and that's something that stood out. And then also that central midfield with Brittany Bach and Becky Edwards looks good again. Carolyn Seeger pushing forward. So by all means, a dominating game. From Western New York. Christine Sinclair should get Player of the Week. Beyond those 2 goals, very active all night. Atlanta, bright spot, definitely Ali Lipscher. I mean, she's the surprise of the season so far. Certainly goalkeeper of the year so far. Very early, obviously, but she made some spectacular saves even while giving up 3 goals. She obviously got peppered, as you can tell from the stats, and the beat defense, and I think they readily admitted it, just had trouble staying with Western New York. Too much pace up top, turf field, it was wet, and the Flash really took advantage of that. Boston certainly changed some things up. Alex Scott going from outside back to basically an attacking, in a forward role. Certainly surprising, but I think she actually was pretty good up there. And if anything, just for the 1 week, it was something different for Boston, which they needed. They needed a change, and it worked out. Dropping Kelly Smith further in the midfield, good move by Coach Tony DiCicco. And Boston gets the 1-0 result. Really needed that, and it really it brought what the kind of result the Breakers I think would expect, with a solid back line keeping the shutout and just relying on that 1 goal, which I think Boston's going to win a lot of games. If they win a lot of games, it's going to be that way. It's going to be a solid back line, keeping the 1 goal, maybe a shutout, and scoring a goal or 2. I don't think it's going to be a very high-scoring team, but well done from the Breakers there to turn things around. Sky Blue, still the problem is finishing. We'll see if Adriana can change that when she comes in. I can't say I've personally seen her, but there has to be something done there, because finishing is definitely the problem. The midfield looks good, defense looks pretty good, and it's up front again. It's just that final third, it's just not there. Decision making and the actual quality of finishing for Sky Blue. And then Magic Jack, obviously, not much information out of there. Lisa Devanna coming on as a super sub. She scores within a minute of coming on in the 75th minute. That's the difference, 2-1 for Magic Jack. And when we get some actual information out of there, which will hopefully be soon, maybe we can chat more about that. But it's silly to kind of try to draw conclusions beyond the actual result when you can't even talk to anyone down there. So, 2-1 for Magic Jack over Philly, 3-0 to the Flash over Atlanta. Great result for them, and we'll see how they follow that up with the Sky Blue game. Sky Blue, if they have any shot in Salem Stadium on Friday, they need to find a way to create some chances and actually finish them. They need to put some goals on the board. And we will be there again Friday night, 7:30. We'll be live blogging that at Salem Stadium, Sky Blue at Western New York, and then obviously a couple games on Sunday as well, with Atlanta going to Magic Jack, and then Boston is at Philly on the Fox Soccer Game of the Week. You can join us again next week for the weekly on EqualizerSoccer.com. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Jeff Kassouf, and we'll talk to you soon.